the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she never been able to get.
All right, I wonder if you can hear that now.
Get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted.
Let's see.
Donald Trump left us the worst
They can never
public
get
health
disapproved. So it doesn't
epidemic
matter what she
in
does
effect.
about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Let's do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get Congress as part of the federal
Ah, crap.
and we did. They never get disapproved.
All right, let me see if I got this going. Ah, crap. All right, now I can't see if I got this going. Ah, crap. Automatically. All right, now let me see if I got this going. Speaker. Okay. All right, and let's see if I got it now. Nope. Speaker. Okay. All right, and let's see if I got it now. Nope. Speaker. Yo, can y'all hear that? Can you hear? Can somebody tell me if they can hear something? No. And I can't hear a thing. I can't hear a thing.
In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month?
Can you all hear it now,
7th
Matt?
month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the
You can hear it?
former
Cool.
governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
I can hear, don't want to hear her.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to
We're gonna be
Republicans,
good, then.
Democrats, voters
Now I can
across
hear,
the
so y'all
board
can
in
hear.
this
Y'all can
country.
hear me, right?
Vice President
All right, then
Harris,
we good.
you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from
Right.
President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why?
How do you know that?
Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
That y'all
And I'll tell
caused.
you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion
stop
and
it.
boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about
need to
your
stop.
needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And
That
the
is
people that do go, she's
facts.
bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Facts.
And then showing them in a different light. So she can't
Facts.
talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the
Exactly.
biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
Facts.
That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured,
That is
or
not
abused
true.
by individuals.
They
within
got
the immigrant
pictures of
community.
motherfuckers
People
walking
on television.
Let me
with
just say here,
dead
this is
ducks.
the
People on
Yes,
television
that's not
say my
true.
dog was taken and
Yup.
used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by
Yes.
the people that went there.
That's true.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of
Oh,
that.
fuck,
Vice
that
President Harris, I'll
Springfield
let you
manager
respond to the rest
lied.
of what
I
you've
saw
heard.
the pictures of those
Talk about
motherfuckers walking with
extreme.
ducks.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President
John
Dick
McCain.
Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
John McCain
And
dead.
if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so
Right.
graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban
Right.
and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire them. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation.
Yep.
They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
How many votes did she get?
Let me continue on immigration. It was what
That's
you
what
wanted
he
to talk
should have
about
said.
earlier. So
He
let's
should
get
have been.
back
How
to
many
your
votes did you
deportation,
get for the primary?
proposal
that's right.
that the vice president has reacted
He
to
missed
as
that
well.
opportunity.
President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard.
Melvin,
You
I
say
didn't know
if things
that
get out
was
of control,
you.
you
I didn't know you was
no problem
innocent.
using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
I wonder what she gonna
As
say
you know,
now.
the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime.
Yes.
It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they
Yup,
said they created
that was a
turned out to be a
fraud.
fraud.
President
Sure
Trump, thank you.
was.
I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich,
Watch this. Look at her
coming
laughing.
from someone who has been prosecuted for
What does that have to do with what
national
he
security
said?
crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Wow.
And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for
Why
the
do they
rule
do
of law
this? Why do
and
politicians
respect for
do
law
this?
enforcement.
Or do
The
this?
former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this
said nothing
same
about them
old
motherfucking
tired
immigrants.
rhetoric
Ain't that
and
some shit?
address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries.
Why
But
haven't
frankly,
they done
the
that?
American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
I'm
President
exhausted
Harris,
with y'all
thank you.
playbook
Excuse
because I'm
me.
broke as fuck.
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then
answering the
they
question,
say,
though.
oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election.
He
They're
just
fake
answered it,
cases.
President Trump,
He
thank you.
just
A really
answered
quick
it.
response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would
did not say
weaponize
that.
the
She's a
Department
fucking
of
lie.
Justice
He did
against
not
his
say that.
political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president,
Weaponized, please.
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government
Okay, let's
buyback
see what she
programs
say
for
about
assault
this.
weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border
Let's see what she
crossings.
says.
Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every
Okay, so
one of
answer.
the,
Just
at least
get to the
every
answer.
point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, you're
She said nothing about them guns.
$1 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn,
Right.
Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars.
Sure enough,
many,
fuck
many
did.
billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years.
Yes, she said
Defund
it.
the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't
Yes.
mind, please.
Thank
Does
you.
that sound familiar?
Thank you.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to
You
let
hit her with
criminals
all
that
shit.
killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She
Oh,
did things that
man.
nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
Yep, and that's why
They
gas
took,
was
when they took
$1.68.
over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up
Through the roof.
They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw
Yep.
what happened to gasoline. So
Electric
they said,
bill
let's
is
go
high,
back to Trump.
gas is
But
high.
if she won the election, the
Right
day
now.
after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they
Yep.
need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President Trump.
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days.
Yep.
And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically.
Yeah, that's true.
And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer.
Yep.
That should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She
Yep.
was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done.
Yep.
What about those people? What are they going to be prosecuted? What are
Exactly.
these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
one
ask
of
you-
those, David, one of those people are going to be prosecuted.
Exactly.
One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted. Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
Never.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington,
Yep.
D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers.
they said no.
They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me.
Why
It
would
was
she
just
say no?
2 weeks ago, her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs.
Why
I
did
wasn't
she refuse
responsible
those
for security.
troops? Nobody's
Nancy
ever asked that
Pelosi
question
was
to her.
responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob
Wow.
to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
That is not true. She's lying to her
Let's
fucking
not go
team.
back.
She did not
Let's
say
chart
that.
a course
She lied her
for the
ass off.
future and
He
not
was
go
talking about
backwards
the
to the
auto
past.
industry.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it
Yes.
was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed
Yes.
our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked.
Yes, it
Laura
has.
Ingraham, Sean
She's lying her
Hannity,
ass
Jesse,
off.
all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't
can do
need
an
bills.
executive
They
order.
have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border
said,
is
"Wake his
closed," all
ass
he has
up.
to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
They could do an
Those people are
executive order
killing many
today.
people,
They
unlike
sure
J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in.
Wow.
Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video.
He should have said that,
I didn't
yes.
detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make
Technically,
it.
y'all
And we should
did
just point out
win,
here as
but
clarification, and you
y'all
know
had
this, you and your
more
allies, 60
cheating ballots
cases
than we
in
did.
front of
That's
many
what it
judges,
was.
many of them
No
were
judge
Republican,
looked at it.
and said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we
There
have
you
to
go. Way
solve
to
the
move
problem
past
that we have right now. That's old news.
Where
And the
you
problem
move
that we have
past it.
right
Good
now
job.
is we have a nation in decline.
Good job.
And they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you.
Good
Vice
job.
President
Way to
Harris,
move
you
past
heard the
that.
president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whiskers. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States.
You ain't been to the border.
And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked
Boy,
with
stop.
military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
Boy, she's
And when
lying
you
her
then
ass
talk
off.
in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact,
Now, that's
lose
a good
that
point for her to
election,
make. Say you lost
it
in
leads
court.
one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the
That's a good
American
point.
people
That's a good way
deserve
for her
better.
to put the election and say,
I'll
and
give you 1 minute
law,
to
you
respond,
lost.
Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline.
Sure did.
XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy.
There you go.
He got 14
Good
million
job.
votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out.
He lied
She got
too.
0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans
shit
among
right
them.
there.
Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Yep.
Well,
Let's hear
let's
this.
understand how we got here.
Oh,
On
here we go.
October 7th,
Here we go.
Hamas,
Let's hear
a
it.
terrorist
How we gonna get out?
organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work
Oh my
around the
God.
clock,
Y'all been
also
working on this shit
understanding
since
that we
October?
must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly
She
deserve.
still ain't said it.
President Trump, how would you negotiate
She
with
still didn't say
Netanyahu
it.
and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president,
It would've never happened.
never started.
Yep.
If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party.
At a sorority
She
party.
hates Israel.
That's
If
them
she's
alphas.
president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had.
Sure
Iran
did.
had no money for Hamas
And they
or
funded
Hezbollah
Hamas.
or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, buddy.
This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I
That is
have
true.
my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract
party.
from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself.
Oh my God.
It is
Why
well
do they keep
known
saying
that
This
he
is
said
not
of
true.
Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear.
What is she
They can
saying?
manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why
How is she saying?
so
She just
many
making that
military
shit
leaders
up.
who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent.
And that's
I
all
just
they
ask
got
one
to
question.
instance.
Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Yeah, buddy. He's not really killing her like I wanted him to just yet.
The ABC
but he's
News
definitely doing a
presidential
better job than
debate will
she
continue
is.
after this.
I think that she needs to do a little bit more of the heartstring pulling, because that's what she can really play at, as opposed to like trying to call him out, because she really can't do it because she don't really have nothing to stand on.
But she never makes it into the ball.
I will say that
My gut
she is
knew
actually
this was not a young girl who just ran
she's
away.
actually doing better in
New
the
information,
responses
pools of blood
by
were
not
found by
answering
detectives
and like not getting to the nitty gritty, because she really can't. So she is
It
doing
is
good
a
with just
heart-wrenching
like
day
kind
for the
of
family of Melissa Witt.
fluffing the
Police
answer with
found the
other
body in
things.
the
So she's
Ozark
kind of
National
saying other
Forest.
things around it as opposed to directly
had several
answer. Like
suspects.
when
All
she
these
got
kinds of
asked
leads.
about the
known serial killer in your area. Could he be?
Will that work? I don't know if that'll work. Can y'all still hear that? I was trying to turn that part off. I don't think he can. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, it's like with the things that she was saying, as far like when they asked her about fracking and asked her about the assault weapons ban, the guns, she didn't approach the guns at all. She literally just talked about, oh no, I did say that I was with fracking. Yeah, I did say, well, we have you actually on tape saying you actually will ban fracking. Y'all ain't did no fracking. So it's like she kind of like talked around that part, which was good to like burn them 2 minutes up. And then she like never even commented about the guns, which was like, and that was good for her because she has been adamant about a mandatory buyback. She's been adamant about a mandatory gun buyback, hands down. So it's like that was good for her not to even try to approach it, because she's never went back the other way. She's just flip-flopped all of recently since she's become the presidential candidate. So that was smart for her. She did play it the right way by just like kind of like not acknowledging it, as opposed to trying to say, no, I didn't, because if she did that with everything, it would really discredit her. If every time somebody said something about her and she would be like, no, they told me, no, I told them this, no, I said that, I said this, or I said that. It's good that she's not flip-flopping, because with her not flip-flopping, she can just kind of like she can just go around the question. So it's like you can talk about him and go around the question, which is a good strategy to her point. That's like the best way to do it, as opposed to trying to actually confront it head on, which is why she's kind of doing what she's doing, which if I was her, I would have to do the same thing, because her views and her stances on so much stuff is just not favorable for the majority of the country. They're not with that shit that she owns. So it's good that she's twisting that. Even like when they brought up the economy stuff, it's better for her to spin it on him and to say like, yeah, this was the economy Biden gave. I mean, that Trump gave us. We was trying to fix it. It's easier for her to spin it that way than to say, yeah, we did kind of fuck it up a little bit more by, doing this Inflation Reduction Act, which didn't reduce inflation, it actually increased it. Yeah, we did kind of fuck it up by just taking these billions and millions and billions of dollars and giving them to Ukraine and giving it to everybody else in the country except for the people that actually live there. She actually did that better by just putting it back on him, as opposed to taking responsibility for it, because she really can't. Because if she does, then it's going to make her look bad as far as the economy goes. So those are she's spinning it the right way for herself by not doing that. So he's like, I changed my vote. I'm voting for Trump. When I do, someone shot me. The man is nuts. How can you say this dude is nuts when you look at what the economy is now? Like, you can't tell me that she gonna make it better and that Biden made it better, because you voted for Biden and you gonna vote for her. But if things ain't got better, then why would you say that when you can actually, by the numbers, look at what the economy was when he was there, especially before COVID, and what he's at now and what it's at now? I don't understand that part. Like, you can have your own personal things about him and your isms about him, and the president shouldn't be somebody that you love or somebody that you even like. He should be somebody who can do the job. So you can say if he's crazy, fine, he can be crazy, but am I paying more taxes now than I did then? Yes, that's what matters to me. If he's crazy, if he a racist, fine. Is the cost of living up higher now than it was when he was in office? No, it's higher now than it was when he was there. So it's like he's costing me more. I don't need my president to make me feel good. I don't need my president to be smooth. I don't need my president to be cool. I don't need my president to be black. I don't need my president to be white. I don't need my president to be a male or female. I need my president to get out of my pocket as much as humanly possible. I need less taxes, and with these people, it ain't been that way. And that's just the fact.
Solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity.
What?
And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done
$200 billion
to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator.
If that was the case, he would have been did it while he was in office.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid.
As opposed
they
to
said
giving
the wrong
them
things.
food. Why
that
wouldn't
war
she
should have
stop him?
never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
If she
President
was there
Trump,
to
thank you. You did
stop
bring
it,
up
why
something.
wouldn't she
You said
go
she
and
went to
stop
negotiate
Russia
with
since
Vladimir
Russia's
Putin.
the
Vice
bigger,
President Harris, have you
powerful
ever met
country?
Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times.
Have you met Putin?
The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world
Have you
are
met
dependent
Vladimir Putin
on
is
our
what he
ability
asked
to
you.
look out for our friends.
Do you hear this
and
word
not
salad?
favor our enemies because you adore strongmen
Oh,
instead of
your girl
caring
ain't answering
about
the question.
democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO.
Is it me or
I got
did he-
them to pay up by saying one of the
Vladimir
statements
Putin
you made before,
answered yes or no?
if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
I'm
Otherwise,
just
we
saying,
would have
did
never
I
gotten
not
it.
hear
He
that-
said it
that
was one of
question
the most
correctly?
incredible
Did he
jobs
not
that he's
ask
ever
her,
seen done.
Thank
Have
you.
you
I want to
ever
turn to
met
Afghanistan.
with
It came up in
Vladimir
the first
Putin?
hour of the
And
debate.
she didn't
and we
answer.
witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released.
Ooh,
and get this, no, get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be Commander-in-Chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left. We wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment.
There you go.
And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
There you
But
go.
those were your words. So I'm
I
asking
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can
That's
say
good.
is I read where she
Good
was
answer.
not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with
Leave
me.
it,
That's
leave
up
it
to
like
her.
that, Trump.
That's
Stop
up to
right
her.
there.
Vice President Harris,
Yep.
your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a land. He owned buildings. And he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the
That's good that she
execution
bringing that shit up.
of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
That's good for her to bring that up.
Took
even
out
though
a
it was back in
full-page ad
fucking
calling for their
1985, but it's
execution.
good.
This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
There you
And
go.
I think the
That's good
American
for her.
people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have
he said he didn't
discourse
care.
about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty.
Yeah, but
And I
he
said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago.
There you go.
Because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm
And
going
I
to build it
employed the
again.
most
It's
black
going to
folks,
be
too.
bigger, better, and stronger.
Lowest,
But they're destroying our economy.
employment of
They
black
have
folks.
no
You need to
idea
bring
what a
that
good
up.
economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to
Bring joy.
strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan
Where is it?
to give startup businesses
Where is the plan?
$50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms
I
of
don't
the American
understand.
dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
What the fuck is
That's the
25
kind of
grand gonna
conversation
do
I
for a
believe,
house when
David,
I'm
that
paying
people really
8%
want
in
tonight,
interest?
as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President
Yep.
Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
President
No,
Trump,
Yeah.
President
No,
Trump.
stop him,
No,
stop him, stop him. You let him go back
No,
twice.
I'm sorry, we're going
Nope.
to move
Y'all-
on, Vice
nope.
President Harris.
Y'all went back
President Trump,
twice.
This is now your
Yes.
3rd time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just
get to the point,
explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made.
That means
I've
she's
made
not
very
gonna
clear
answer.
my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand
signed a
just
mandatory
look at the history
buyback
to know where
bill.
people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged
Oh my God.
as being
Why are you talking about
you don't
this dead
like
man?
him, you
It's like
said
you
at
knew
the
him,
time
like
because
he was your
he
boy.
got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Fastest
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump
Told
stands
y'all
on
she
that.
would go after that
issue
shit.
that's important for a lot
Made
of
a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare. Much less money, but she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to give.
President
People
Trump
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs.
Fucking doubled.
And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month.
Yes.
It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Let me go ahead and do this. So my uncle said, listening to you guys, are we watching the same debate? All I'm saying is this. We can go back and forth about who said what. All I'm asking you is this. If we paying more now than we paying then, how could it be better with her? That's all I want to get to. I mean, at the end of the day, whether who you like, who look the best, who make you feel good, that's all up for just, that's subjective. That's all up for debate. All I'm saying is when you look at the facts of where we are at when it comes to finances, your finances and my finances, what we pay in energy, what we pay in groceries, what we pay in fuel, what it costs for your house, for somebody to buy a house to where people literally cannot afford houses today because of what they have done with the economy, because they are the ones that caused interest rates to go up because of inflation. They were the ones that came with these $1 trillion, like she just said, $1 trillion for new energy, $200 billion to Ukraine, $100 million for this, $100 million for that. With all of the spending that they have done, And at the end of the day, we the taxpayers, because they use all taxpayer money to do this, we have been the ones who have had to pay with all of our hard-earned money. We've paid more. They went back. The IRS went back and made me go and pay more taxes over the past 4 years, 5 years that they said I owed more. They went back and did that. So I'm saying with what we're talking about and debating about, I get it. But if you look at the factual numbers of what things cost when he was the president and what things cost while Biden and her are the president and the vice president, how can you tell me that it's better for her and he just crazy? That's my only issue, because we talking about personality traits versus policy. We talking about how somebody make you feel versus the facts. That's where we go wrong as black folks when it comes to casting our vote. You cannot tell me that this person who, when she ran, she didn't even make it to Iowa to where she could even be in the running to become president. When she ran as the vice president, her numbers have been worse than Biden's. That's what the people said who voted her in, right? When you're talking about what she has done, she literally has nothing that she has done that she can say, I did that. In her 3.5 years of being the vice president, she has nothing that she can speak on that she's done. So she has no accomplishments. And then when you go and look at her legal background over in when she was in California, you don't even want to go there. Let's just talk about what she's done now. She has nothing. The one thing that she was responsible for, which was the border, she was the border czar. We got 18 million immigrants in our country now that's pitching tents, killing people, raping people, robbing people, and that's just facts. How can she be better than Trump when the only thing you can say about Trump is back in 1985, he said they need to motherfucking kill them niggas they thought killed that white girl. Back in 1990, he wouldn't rent to some niggas. Hell, I wouldn't rent to niggas today. That's just the reality of it. But you holding those two things to say, yeah, that's what he said back then. He a racist and he crazy. How can you say that and look at what they ain't did and look at the things that they have done and you benefited from none of it and say that that's the person you still gonna vote for? Is Donald Trump a saint? Nope. I think Donald Trump fucked up when he was handling COVID. And I think Donald Trump fucked up when he caved in and signed those fucking bills where they spent that $6 trillion for the COVID relief and all of that shit and all of that. The majority of that money went overseas and went to pet projects as opposed to coming to the people. These the same motherfuckers that wouldn't vote for us to get $2,500. They only voted for us to get $1,000. So I'm just asking that simple question to where it affects your everyday life, your own pocketbooks and your own finances. How is it that this person is going to be better than what Donald Trump has when you can clearly see the numbers to where black folks prospered more than we did today?
We begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country.
Yup.
One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years.
Thank
They've
you.
had 3.5 years
Did I
to
not just
fix
put
the
that in
border.
the chat?
They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things
There
we
you
talked
go.
about. Why hasn't she done
done
it?
it
She
now.
should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together
you
and
go.
do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it.
Good job.
Because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision.
Drive
But
it
I
home
just
again.
ask one simple question.
Why
Why
haven't you
didn't
done
she
it?
do it?
Yes,
We're
good
a
job.
failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline.
Good
We're being
job.
laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have
Good
wars
job.
going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She
Did.
gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are
Yes,
criminals,
drive home
and
that
they're
immigrant.
destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Good
President
job.
Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC
Woo!
News presidential
Way to
debate from
end it.
here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
was good.
I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all
That
over the
was
world,
good.
and from all of us
He
here
wrapped
at
it
ABC
up
News.
right.
Good night.
Yes, indeed. He left people with that. Why haven't you done it
And we
now?
are here live
No
on
handshake or
ABC
nothing,
with
huh?
our post-debate comments. I'm Martha Raddatz. It was a
Cold as ice.
lively debate from the economy to abortion to
Cold
Afghanistan.
as ice.
They had it all, and it was historic, John Carl, fiery.
Wow. 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 That was quite a debate. And I'm Jonathan Carl here with, of course, Mary Bruce and Rachel Scott. Our reporters across the news division have been updating our live blog, looking at some of the
All right. Now, I can tell y'all this. I'm going to wrap up right here. I can tell y'all this right now. They are literally going to say, oh, she was so wonderful. And I'm going to tell you why they're going to say how wonderful she was. And it's because, man, look like I got like white light. Let me see if I can change this. They're going to say that because of Joe Biden. And when you think that, that's much better. When you look at how Joe Biden was comparing to her, it's night and day. She was actually able to not answer questions. She was actually able to respond. And even though she did, in my opinion, I think she did good by her not, let's see. Oh, they did shake hands in the beginning. I think that the fact that she was able to like not really answer the question, but say enough stuff to get around the question, that was very good for her. Because it was either that or you gonna freeze up and stutter and stammer. So she kind of just kept reverting back to talking about him and saying he did, which was good to her benefit, as opposed to like actually answering the question. Because if she gave an actual answer, she would either lie through her teeth or she would look bad answering it truthfully. So she did very good in that regard. But as far as just the overall, like hitting the points and hitting the, yeah, she missed the mark on several of those. I like the fact for her, she brought up and I will say this too. I'll give her another point on this. She actually brought up the things that she could to make him look bad. Talking about the Central Park 5, even though that shit happened back in the fucking 80s, she still brought it up, which she should have, because it was something that was a bad look in today's world. It didn't look bad back then, but it looks bad now. So she brought that up. And then her bringing up the not renting to black folks back in the fucking 90s, which, like I said, that shit was back in the 90s, but it made him look bad today. So she did do that, which was good for her. And just the overall just saying, well, everything that we did because we were trying to fix his mess, the mess we got. That was, well, and all politicians do that. Everybody always say, I inherited this. Obama said he inherited the shit from Biden. Biden said, not Biden, but Obama said he inherited the shit from Bush and he was trying to clean it up, which gives you that time to do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and that was the same thing with Trump and saying, hey man, I had a terrible situation from what I inherited from Obama. It's like every president does that. You always say all the shit that's bad is from the last term, and I'm just gonna try to fix it now. That's just what that is. But I will say this, the biggest thing about it is that he ended it by talking about all this wonderful shit you talking right now. I hear what you saying, but answer me this, riddle me this, Batwoman. Why haven't you done it? Y'all been in office. Y'all could have been fixed the board. And like, that was a great point he did. He knocked that one out of the park. When he said, you could go down and we could go down to D.C. right now, and we can go to the White House right now, wake your sleeping ass boss up or call your boss in off of vacation, and you can actually sign an order right now to close the border. And they would do it. Why haven't you done it? Why haven't you done it? And that's the biggest thing that I'm so glad he hit home. And it's like, when you look at where we're at today, we are not in a good place as a country. It ain't shit nobody can say. That's a fucking fact. There is nobody who can say that we are better off today than we was 4 years ago. And my thing is, with all of the shit that she's saying now, that she wants to do, that she wants to fix, that she's going to turn around and get together, why haven't you done it when you been the motherfucker in the driver's seat? Y'all been at the helm. You all have been guiding the ship all of this time. And if this is such the wonderful thing and such the right thing to do, and this is going to help everybody, what are you waiting for to help everybody when you are the person who can help everybody? And all that means is that you are not in the business of helping everybody. You're in the business of pushing your agenda. You're in the business of moving your agenda forward, which has been the agenda that Biden has, and your agenda is even more radical than his. That's just the reality of it. And all I'm saying to everybody else, I don't want any part of that, because what that entails and what her agenda involves me with, it involves me paying way more in taxes and giving them more money and more power to do whatever the fuck they want to enrich themselves and to keep us poor. And I'm not with that. I'm never going to be with that. That's all. I'm not gonna be a part of that. That's all I'm saying. So I would rather trust what has been when I had good times. 4 years ago, I literally, and this is just me, middle-class American right here. 4 years ago, before these motherfuckers came in office, I was making the most money I've ever made in my entire life. I was living in the best situation that I've ever lived in. That's just the facts. I was able to afford way more than what I can afford now. Since then, in these past 4 years, I am paying more than I've ever paid in taxes. I am living a less quality life than I have ever lived. I am paying more for everything that I was paying for now. It is costing me astronomically more, not a little bit more, but astronomically more than what I've ever paid. And on top of that, I have made more money. I got a promotion during this time and I have less than what I did before I got a promotion and I had more. That's bad policy and that's bad economics. I don't give a fuck what you say about somebody crazy. I don't give a fuck about what you say about, oh, they racist. I don't give a fuck about what you say. Those are the facts. That is the truth. And what I'm saying to you, there are hundreds of thousands of Americans that are saying the same thing. People can't afford shit, and it's because of their bad policies and reckless spending. They sent $200 billion over to Ukraine, not Trump. They spent $1 trillion on the Green New Deal that didn't help none of us, not Trump. So when you're talking about a motherfucker who done spent $200 billion over in another country, spent $1 trillion on some Green Deal shit that ain't none of us benefited from. They spent what was it, $8 billion on getting some fucking power plants to charge electric vehicles and only built 9 of them. That's reckless spending. I don't give a fuck what you say. And all I'm saying is, I know that I'm paying for it, and I know that all of the people that got jobs and get their ass up and go to work every day, we're the ones that's paying for it, and I'm not with paying for more shit that they just coming up with, sitting on the fucking toilet, smoking a joint and having these grand ideas and don't have no real plans and policies that are gonna help me. So I will never vote for anybody that's doing that versus what I'm actually going through and experiencing in my everyday life. And if anybody else is with that shit, hey man, go ahead and live your life. And if you want to be a broke motherfucker for the rest of your life and what you making is just enough, fine. But it's plenty of people who don't even have what I have that can't even get it because of the way shit is today. You realize they just said that more than ever, millennials have moved back home with their parents? Do you realize that the millennials literally cannot afford to buy a home today? The ones that are making $60,000 and up, they can't afford to buy a home because of the interest rate, because of inflation and the price of housing now, because of what the fuck they did. Do you realize that there are no vehicles? There's only one car that is under $20,000. Any car you buy is over that. So you're talking about a $700 car note with the average vehicle, when 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the average vehicle for the average car note was maybe around $450. Now that shit is like $800. So that's the reality of it. And you can debate all this other bullshit. We can talk about all this other shit till the cows come home. I'm talking about the cold hard reality and the straight up facts of my living situation and so many people that are like it. That's the reality. We can talk bullshit all you want to, but I can't buy steak now. And that ain't got shit to do with Donald Trump. We can talk all the shit we want to talk now. My fucking electric bill is fucking almost $500 a fucking month. And that's because of what? Them motherfuckers with the hike in the energy prices. They're the ones that increase energy because they don't want you to use fossil fuel anymore. They want you to put solar panels on your house. I don't want to do that. So that's all I'm saying. When you talking about what a motherfucker actually got to spend and what a motherfucker actually shit costs, that's the reality of it. And ain't nobody gonna tell me or make me believe that that bitch who's been here for 3.5 years is gonna make it better for me when she could have been making it better for me and she didn't. So as in her words, as she says, let's be clear. I know what she's been doing because I've been watching her for 3.5 years. And what she's doing in 3.5 years and what Donald Trump has done in 4 years, I'm gonna take the Trump over the fucking Harris. Because that didn't help me not one single fucking iota. And the shit that Donald Trump did helped me a bunch of iotas. So fuck Harris and fuck Biden. I'm not with that shit. And we're not going to even get into talking about Tim Walz and his tampon handing out to boys' ass. I don't give a fuck how anybody who is even a Christian can be with that shit. I don't give a fuck what you say. You got a motherfucker walking around handing out tampons to little boys. Not motherfucking men, little boys. Not adults, little boys. And y'all cool with that shit? then I'm going to question your integrity and I'm going to question your morals and values if you cool with a motherfucker doing that shit. Because that's how running make. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm going to probably go try to see if I can hook up with my boy Tommy because I know he was doing an after show, I believe. My auntie said I'm going to answer this last question because it's my auntie and I got to. This is urgent, Uncle. Did Trump say anything crazy? Oh, you saying my uncle said, did Trump say anything crazy? I think that Trump says a lot of things that are not necessarily crazy. They just sound unhinged and they don't sound, I guess you would say, they don't sound like, they don't sound smooth. They don't sound comforting. And I'm going to say this, most businessmen, especially successful ones, they don't say shit to make you feel good because they got money and they know how to make money. They are businessmen and they know how to get shit done. And when you think about real businessmen, they don't talk like most normal people talk, like Bill Gates. He don't talk like a normal person. Elon Musk doesn't talk like a normal person. You go down the line of just your billionaires. Even motherfucking not Tim Cook, the motherfucker Steve Jobs. He didn't talk like a normal person. They all have their own way on how they express themselves, and they don't have filters because they got fuck you money. So I understand that most rich people that I personally know, they have a little ism, a little quirkiness about them to where they say what the fuck they want because they got fuck you money. Not people that just made it and got rich. I'm talking about people that come from money. They usually talk that way because they can. And it may sound offensive, but it's literally just that's how they do shit. And they are very blunt and a lot of times very abrasive just because they got it like that. Look at Tyreek Hill. That's a nigga who just got new money and he talking shit to the police. Like I showed today in the show. So I think it's not necessarily a crazy thing. It's just a thing that don't make everybody feel good. I've had bosses that I've worked for that come off wrong, but they know what the fuck they doing when it comes to getting the job done. And I'm okay with that. Like I said earlier at that halftime, that little break, I don't need my president. I don't need my mayor. I don't need my alderman. I don't need my state reps. I don't need them motherfuckers to make me feel good. I need them to do the job and I need them to get the fuck out my pocket and leave me the fuck alone. I don't need them to give me more policies, more rules, and more taxes. Get the fuck out of my life and let me live it and let me make my decisions. And you just run the fucking day-to-day shit to run the country and to keep this motherfucker afloat and going in the right direction. That's all I expect. I don't want nobody to be smooth. I don't want nobody to be no cool ass nigga that can come dap me up and all that shit. I got family and friends to do that shit with. You ain't got to make me laugh. I don't need you to make me feel good. I need you to handle your business. You got a job to do, motherfucker, and I'm voting for you to do the job. Get the economy on track, get the fucking border secure, and get my taxes lower. Them the three things that I give a fuck about. I don't care how you do it, get it done. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. I love y'all. Till next time. Peace and amen.